Welcome, everyone, to In the Spotlight on the Rosie and Bill Show. Joining me tonight is an incredibly talented singer-songwriter who's a master of the fretboard as well, and he served our country as a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division of the Army. Please welcome to In the Spotlight, a truly amazing artist and an amazing guy, too, Rockie Lynne. Rockie, welcome to the show.
Gosh, Bill. Well, thank you so much for having me. I was looking around to see who was going to be on the show, man. Like, who's he talking about? Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you for those kind words, and thank you so much for what you do for our community. It's an honor for me to be on the Rosie and Bill show for sure. Thank you, man.
Well, it's an honor for me to have you on the show. And first and foremost, Rockie, I want to thank you for your service. And I also want to thank you for being a positive role model and an inspirational role model for all of us. I, for one, truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you for saying that as well, Bill. The military was a pivotal point in my upbringing. And I think that the Army gave me way more than I ever gave the Army. But I went in shortly after Vietnam, and all of the instructors, the drill sergeants and stuff were all people who were Vietnam combat soldiers. And I was, stationed at Fort Bragg, and those men every day they would get on you, make you get up and do what you had to do. And today I get up every day and I exercise, I make my bed, I've got a family and a home and a career that I love. I do something for a living that I would gladly have done for free, which is a huge blessing for me to be able to do that. And I credit those men in the military that pointed me in the right direction when I was such a young kid for doing that. So I appreciate you reaching out and thanking all the veterans. We need to get behind those men and women that serve our
Yeah.
country.
Well, and I'll tell you, Rockie, I think it really boils down to this, and I've said this often, and that is I don't get to do what I do, and none of us get to do what we do if it wasn't for you and the other veterans and heroes who've served our country. So that's why I believe so strongly in making sure to take every opportunity to thank everyone who made that sacrifice and served our country so that we can do what we do. And I'm glad that you get to do what you love to do. And I'm looking forward to talking all about it, Rockie. And also, I wanted to a lot of people who've watched our show over the years, they know that it ends up being kind of a mini biography or a mini documentary of our guests' lives. But in your case, there's already one out there. And I have to admit, I've watched it twice. And
Oh my
folks,
goodness.
yes, folks, if you haven't seen Where I Belong, Rocky's story, I promise you, you'll be glad you did. It's on Amazon Prime, I believe, and it's I think it may also be on PBS, but I
It's
know it's
streaming on yes, yes, Bill, it's streaming on all the PBS.com stations, and a lot of the stations around the country are showing it. And you can also see it on Amazon Prime. And I think no one is more surprised than me that our little movie has done all the has getting all the attention that it's getting and is doing so well. We're so grateful for that. And it really uh, you know, Bill, we could have made a completely different movie about life in orphanages and foster homes in the 60s and 70s. It could have been something that that wasn't a positive movie. And I love how we worked really hard to make it about the idea that hope springs eternal, and that as long as you continue to strive forward and look for your tribe, whatever that tribe may be, that you'll eventually find it.
no, absolutely, and it comes through. And I have to tell you, Rocky, that's one of the reasons why I watched it twice because you can't help but feel good after you
Wow.
watch it, and we need more of that. So that's why, again, I'm encouraging everyone, if you haven't seen it yet, or even if you have, go back and watch it again. One thing that came to mind, though, as I was watching it was where did the inspiration come from for you to just basically what inspired you to bring your story to life in the way that you did? I know you just talked about where you wanted it to go and how you wanted it to be presented, but what inspired you to actually go about the process to begin with?
Well, that really is J.C. Summerford, who was the producer of the documentary. She was also the producer of an A&E television show called Operation Build that I hosted a couple episodes of. And she came to me and she said, "You know, I've been in this business a long time, and I know a good story when I see one. I'd like to tell your story." And no one was more surprised about that than me. Why would anybody want to make a movie about me? But she was insistent on that it would be something that would be engaging, and it would be something that would be a positive thing in the world. And so we began the process of collecting videos and stuff. In my story, I'm so old that my story starts before people had cell phones and they were filming everything. My drummer once said to me, said, I've been all around the world for you, but I can't prove it. I don't have any pictures of it with all the places that we had been. But J.C. Summerford really wanted to tell this story, and she was the catalyst behind uh, us beginning to do it. And then once we started filming, it took a life of its own. And then fortunately and unfortunately for the world, COVID came right in the middle of our filming. And and that's where I think the really big part of the movie came, because that's where they found my father. Because I grew up in an orphanage in North Carolina for the first part of my life. And then we talked about being in the army, but they found my father during this COVID thing through a DNA investigator kind of person. And even though I had never met him and never knew who he was, and he never knew about me or knew anything about me, we were very similar people. He was a guitar player in a country band. He was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne, and he rode a motorcycle his whole life. So even though I didn't know where the tree was, I didn't fall very far from it. And we got to be very close after we met. After we had met each other, we got to be very close with each other, and I was able to be with him in his final hours of his life. And this is interesting because I spent most of my life prior to making this movie either avoiding the question of my childhood or right out lying about it, because I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I didn't want them to think about, oh, he's the kid from the orphanage, or he this or whatever happened. I didn't want that. I wanted to be known for my own merits and what I did. But the truth is, it really did matter to me when I found out where my roots were. Our Thanksgiving dinner went from our little family around the table to going to this house up in Millers Creek, North Carolina, with my sister now, who I didn't have any sisters. Now I have three sisters and two brothers, and there's uncles and aunts and nieces and nephews, and it means so much to me. And I spent so much of my life pretending that it didn't matter, or maybe thinking that it didn't. But then I realized, if it means that much to me, it would mean that much to anyone. And if this could help someone maybe deal with all those internal things that they're trying to deal with and push that aside, then what a great opportunity for me to do something like that.
Yeah, and Rocky, I have to tell you, one of the things that I wanted to be thoughtful of as we're having this conversation is I don't want to give too much away from the documentary because I really want everybody to watch it. But there's some highlight moments, and you just talked about when you found your dad, and there's some scenes where you bring him up on stage and you sing together, and another one that blew me away when he gives you a very special present, and your reaction to that was priceless. It's one of those moments I actually kind of rewound and watched again. Can you share that part of the story with us about that special gift that he gave you?
Absolutely. Um, my biological father, for a living, was a truck driver. He drove a truck from Statesville, North Carolina to New York City 3 times a week and delivered whatever he would drive. And then on the weekends, when he got back, he had a band called the Talk of the Town, and he played around at the VFWs and all the places that we all played when we were growing up, except he played those places his whole life. And for a blue collar guy like that, with three daughters and a son and a wife, you don't have a lot of extra money. And he purchased one guitar and his life, a 1975 Martin D35, which is a really nice instrument. And that was his pride and joy. And anytime you would go and see Clyde Holloway and the talk of the town play, he's playing that guitar. And as we got to be, it's interesting because he was nervous about meeting me, and I guess I was nervous about meeting him as well because he's a Korean War veteran and not really sure about DNA and that kind of thing. And so we met in a public space with his children, and we sat down and talked, and within 10 minutes it was obvious that he was my father.
Wow.
And after we had been there for about an hour, we were getting ready to leave, and he took my wrist. He grabbed my wrist like this with his hand. He grabbed it hard. And he said, I just want you to know that if I'd known you were in that place, I'd have come and got you. And he meant it. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. And then he's literally on oxygen and he's got COPD. And we know that we're within just a few weeks of him transitioning on to the next part. And I get to his house and I'd always bring my guitar and I would play songs and he would sing because he couldn't play anymore. He had arthritis in his hands and his guitar had been sitting in a closet. And he told his wife, he said, go get that thing. And she knew exactly what to do. And she brought this case out and he took this D35 out and he handed it to me and he said, I want you to have this. He gave me his guitar and it was his prize, his pride and joy, that guitar was. It meant as much to him as probably not as much as his children, but it meant a lot to him.
Sure.
And now when you come see me play, I'm playing my dad's guitar. And there's a connection there that I never thought would happen. And then when it did happen, it meant so much to me. It's been very inspiring as a songwriter to write on the instrument that he played on as well.
Well, and Rocky, I have to tell you another aspect of it that I thought was just so special about it being a guitar is the fact that another aspect of the documentary that really jumped out at me, and also several of the people talking about you in the documentary, was your fascination with and your dedication to the guitar and how much the guitar meant to you. So, therefore, I can only imagine that particular gift, maybe more than anything else, how valuable and how important that could be to you. But what was it initially about the guitar that resonated with you so much? Because you spent hours and hours and years working to become, as I said in the intro, a master of the fretboard.
Well, I don't have full long memories of the orphanage as a little boy. I just have scattered memories of it. I remember there was a record player up at the front and they have some songs that you could play and I would always be there it's like a big room. It's like a big, a big floor with 200 kids in it.
Hmm.
And then once in a while they would have people come in that would read us stories or do whatever. And one day they had a man come and he played guitar and his name was Niley, that was his name.
Hmm.
And he sat there, and I was sitting on the floor, Indian style, right in front of him, and he had a guitar. Um, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, it was an ovation because I remember thinking it was round and not square in the back. And he played I'm Going to Alabama with a banjo on my knee. And that music, it was just like the first time I heard Tony Orlando's music on the record player there. It went through me, and I thought, I knew right away at that moment that I was going to spend the rest of my life trying to learn how to play the guitar. And I sit here today visiting with you, who I'm a big admirer of your Rosie's show and what you do. But when I come in the studio every day, I take a couple hours and I practice the guitar because that's still my goal to try to figure out how to play it, and always give it the respect that it's due. I think that playing a guitar is a lot like riding a motorcycle in this respect. You should always respect the instrument and where it came from, same as you do the machine and the past history with that. Because the moment you think you know how to ride a motorcycle,
Hmm.
that's the day you should park it. You should park that motorcycle because you're going to get hurt on it. And the day that I feel like I can play the guitar is the day that I should quit because there's so many people that came before me that are so good and have influenced our world and changed our very way that we communicate with each other in the modern sense, that I always want to see myself as a student of something that I love very much.
You know what's interesting? And I'm really happy to hear you say that, Rocky, because some of the most talented musicians that I've been blessed to be able to have conversations like this with all have something in common. And it's very similar to what you just talked about. They are constantly and forever a student of that instrument. I remember Billy Sheehan, one of the best bass players on the planet. And Billy, to this day, practices and practices and practices because he's trying to get better and he's trying to learn how to play that bass. And just so many people, it's just something that I really admire, that you focus on your craft. And some of the greatest singers that we've had on still have vocal coaches in some cases. So I just
Oh
have a lot
yeah.
of respect and admiration for how you do it, and what you do. And it clearly shows in anyone who's seen you perform. And like I said, to me, that guitar, and kind of going back to that moment, just amplifies and magnifies how special that is. And you mentioned that you've been using it to write songs. And another aspect of your artistry that I really admire is your songwriting. So when did that enter the picture for you?
Well, I have always written songs, and I don't I think at first it was because when back in the back to the orphanage story, they would take us on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday to this place called Little Joe's Chapel, which was on the property there. And of course, it was a church, and this man would stand up at the podium and scream at us and yell all sorts of Bible things. But before that, they would play music, and there would be a lady playing the hymns, and they would open the hymnals and sing. And of course, I couldn't read, so I didn't know what bringing in the sheaves meant. But I remember thinking to myself, this is the 4-year-old kid thinking, I could write better songs than sheaves. I don't know what sheaves is. So I would make up my own words to the to the cadences and to the things that they were playing. And I think I was singing about airplanes or something. But I remember thinking, hey, this is pretty good. Of course it wasn't, but I thought it was, right? And so and then when I finally was able to get a guitar, because I mean, from the moment that I fell in love with the guitar, it took until I was in between my sixth and seventh grade years to get a guitar. So I spent that summer mowing yards with a guy that had a lawn mowing service, and I would do all the push mowing. And he paid me, $1 an hour or whatever he paid. And then at the end of the summer, I had enough money to order a guitar from J.C. Penney's. I
Oh,
ordered oh, hold on, hang on one second. I've still got it. I'll show it to you.
oh my
Uh,
gosh.
um, where did I put
Wow.
it? Um, so I've got it right here in this back room. Sorry, I'm just grabbing it for you. So,
That's okay. Wow,
yeah,
that's
hey,
amazing. You still have
so
it.
it was $99. It was $99 from J.C. Penney's. And listen, here's the great thing. All the guitar players remember this. This guitar was made at the Matsuzo factory in Japan, which is where they were also making all of the Fenders, Stratocasters that were Japanese made. And sometimes when they would run out of the cheaper parts, they would just put the good parts on. And so this is exactly the same guitar I paid, you know, uh, $99 from J.C. Penney's, and it's still in tune, and it's been sitting in the room for years. And I got this guitar,
Wow.
and I forgot what I was telling. I forgot what story I was talking about. But we were talking about how the guitar became so
Yeah.
meant so much to me.
Yeah.
And like so I wanted the guitar so bad, and then it took years and years to get one. When I finally got one, I just dug in as hard as I possibly could to figure out how it works and how it made sounds. And I'm still trying to figure that out today.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny. I know when I was younger, I started playing guitar, and I quickly realized within a few short weeks that it was time to start playing the drums. I admire your stick-to-itiveness, and the fact that you still have that guitar is amazing. And but as you were sharing that, and again, going back to some of the things and some of the different aspects that really jumped out at me from the documentary Where I Belong. One thing, there was a constant from when you reflected back on how you ended up at the orphanage to all the different phases of your life, and there were ups, downs, but through it all, you always maintained a positive outlook and looked on the bright side. So where do you think that came from, and how were you able to maintain it through all of those incredible highs and lows you've been through?
I think, Bill, that we go through valleys in our lives so that we can recognize when we're on the top of the mountain. And I think it's actually a gift to go through those rough times. I remember when I got adopted when I was 5 years old, and I went to a little house on a dirt road uh, with my new mom and dad, who were just, they were very poor, wonderful country people. But I went from sleeping in a room with 40 kids to having my own room. And it wasn't a fancy room, it wasn't a mansion, it was a little house on a dirt road. But it was a huge step up from where I was. And so for me, the fact that I love this guitar so much and I could get to the point where I could actually do just that for a living, that was a success for me. I think that people have different tape measures that they measure success for. I recently did an interview with a guy who uh, he's a big time kind of writer, and his first question was, well, how did the failure of your Universal Records contract, how did that affect you? And I was stunned by that because I didn't see that as a failure at all. Before the record deal, I was playing nightclubs and honky tonks and casinos and Piggly Wiggly grand openings. And after that, I'm playing at places where people sit in chairs and listen to me. That is success to me, and from his point of view, who grew up, he lives in a brownstone in New York City and grew up in Charleston as a very wealthy person. That might have been a failure to him, but to me, it was anything but that. It was a success because I was able to continue to do what I really love.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is that I mean, at least in terms of that particular record deal, I mean, and there's things that have happened with record companies, and sometimes it's timing, but it has nothing to do with you or the artist or your craft. It's just things happen. But again, no matter what's happened to you, good, bad, or indifferent, you find a way to keep moving forward with a smile on your face, looking for the bright side, and just taking things as they come. And to me, that that is success, but that's also the best way to do it, even though it's not always the easiest thing to do.
No, I totally agree with you, man. 100%, Bill.
One other aspect of the documentary I wanted to bring up, and then I want to move into some more current things as well. But the tribute for the troops, which again, very touching part of the film, seeing what it's meant to some of the people over the years. Can you give us a little bit of history as to what inspired it to begin with and kind of how it's grown over the years?
Tribute to the Troops honors families who have lost loved ones in military service. Our writers visit Gold Star families to let them know that their continuing sacrifice will not be forgotten. Standing in the very yard that their heroes grew up in, telling their story and sharing memories.
A little boy in a uniform, 5 years old in the backyard playing war, dreaming of everything he could be. In this land of the free, just like his old man did back in Vietnam. He was gonna be a hero for sure, that little boy in a uniform.
Well, you mentioned earlier about the men and women that serve our country and how we should be thankful for them. I think in retrospect, having been a soldier that was deployed uh, in service of our country, that you don't know that at the time. As an 18-year-old boy, like if I had known what a paratrooper was, I probably wouldn't have done it. I signed up because it was $126 extra a month. That's why I signed up. And I went in the Army so I could go to Musicians Institute in Los Angeles. All of these things that happened by happenstance to get me where I'm going. But 22 years ago was near the beginning of the first part of the big war after 9/11. And
Mm.
the first soldier that was killed in the Minnesota area, and I was living up in Anoka County, Minnesota. This is before I had a record deal. Was a guy who was a helicopter pilot from Menominee, Wisconsin. And it
Mm.
was on the front page of the Star Tribune, the Minneapolis paper. It was the first story on KARE 11 News that night. They said, this Minnesota soldier has lost his life. Well, fast forward 6 months, and I'm changing my strings, getting ready for the whatever gig I'm doing that night. And the news comes on and they say, oh, somebody robbed a liquor store in St. Paul. There's a traffic jam on I-35. Another Minnesota soldier killed in Iraq. And I thought, no way, man. That's not right. It should be, why is it not the first page now?
Mm.
So that day, uh, myself and Greg Smith, who was my booking agent at the time, he's a patriot and a wonderful person. We love motorcycles. I had this song called Home, which
Mm.
has had this incredible life of its own, being on Criminal Minds and a bunch of other television shows. And I would sing it every night and dedicate it to the men and women that serve our country. Every single night that I would play that song. And so my friend John Murray made a video of it. And the video was really just a PowerPoint presentation showing like soldiers doing soldier stuff. And then in the chorus, he showed all the people from Minnesota who had lost their life. Just showed the picture of him, Levi Angle, and had the date that he passed and had a picture of him. And I thought the mothers and fathers would really like to see this video. And that's how Tribute to the Troops started. That
Mm.
first year, we visited 3 families. We got on our motorcycles. We got lost. We didn't know where we were going and what we were doing. And we ended up in the yards of 3 people who had died, literally given their life so that we could ride those motorcycles and so that we could have this conversation here.
Yeah.
And that has led into us visiting over 450 homes over the last 22 years. We've raised over $1.5 million and helped send 127 children to college whose mothers and fathers were killed
Wow.
serving our country. And let me tell you, Bill, I get emotional talking about it, but when people talk about success or failure or hoopla or whatever, if you would have told me that I was going to be able to be a part, even a small part of something like that, that did such a good thing in the world, I would have thought if I could be a part of that, that'd be the best thing I could ever do. And what else could we want to do but something like that? I'm so proud of it.
Wow, that is again, I knew from what I've read about it, and what I saw in the documentary, I know that it has grown and it's an amazing event, but I didn't know those numbers. And 127 children, you said, have been able to go to college. That
Yes,
is
sir.
that is something amazing, excuse me, to be a part of, Rocky. And I thank you for that because again, not only did you serve, but you're doing things for others who've served and others who've made that ultimate sacrifice. So
Well,
kudos to you and
something
thank
that
you for
people
doing
don't
that.
know, Bill, is that, and this, I almost told you this part when we were talking before the show started, and you were talking about your friend that was suffering from PTSD.
Mhm.
And see, a lot of the children that we have helped are people whose fathers or mother lost their battle with PTSD. And
Yeah,
we have to be aware that 22 veterans a day
yeah,
take their life. And when we're standing in the very yard where that young man learned to play ball with his brother and where he asked his wife to marry him or whatever we're doing in that yard, we don't see that as a suicide at all. I think when a young man who had a perfectly healthy subconscious and a healthy mentality comes back from serving our country and seeing things that people should never see, and he loses his battle with PTSD. I don't think it's a depression. I don't think it's a drunken moment or drugs or suicide. We see that as a 7,000-mile sniper shot. It's a KIA from Fallujah, but our country, our government doesn't treat it that way. They don't get the same benefits that someone who got shot in Fallujah gets.
yeah.
And so that's why we found it was important to come up with, if people, I didn't know people were going to start giving us money. They'd started giving us money, and I don't want to make any money off that. So we created this charity called a 501(c)(3), which means that, I guess that means that we're doing all the right things because you get to keep
Yeah.
that moniker or whatever.
Yep.
But and it's an all volunteer organization. I'd like to say that too. Like everyone that works for it and everyone that comes and does spend all this time, they all do it for free. They do it for free because they just want to say thank you to those people and help a little bit and give back if we can.
Wow. Well, that's truly amazing. And again, I thank you. And what you just said about that 7,000-mile sniper shot, I remember when you said that in the film, and it really caused me to pause and think because you nailed it. That is exactly what it is. So I'm glad that you shared that again here because it's a powerful and poignant and accurate statement, in my opinion. So thank you for that, Rocky.
Well, we are all over the country. We're doing these rides and these events, and so anybody wherever you are, if you see a tribute to the troops event, please come with us. All the events are free.
Hmm.
We want you to come and be a part of it, and it'll change your life. You'll walk away from that event thinking two things. I do every time we do it. I think this is the nicest thing I've ever seen a group of human beings do for someone they don't know. Because they come from, like, we just did the West Virginia ride, and we had people from North Carolina, from South Carolina, from Florida, from Minnesota, from Iowa, from Tennessee, from Oregon. People from
Wow.
Oregon rode their
Wow.
motorcycles to West Virginia to stand in this boy's yard and say, "We know that there's an empty place at your table every day. Every day is Memorial Day at their house."
Hmm.
I've got children, and if something happened to one of my children, I don't know if I'd ever even get out of bed. And these men and women that are these parents and wives and husbands, they get up every day, and their whole mission in life becomes to make sure that people don't forget. One of the things, Bill, that a mother told me once at the very beginning at the very, very beginning of tribute, it was like maybe it might have been that first day when we were doing the ride. She said, "I think there's 2 days that my son died. The day that he died in Iraq and the day that nobody gave a shit."
Oh,
And he goes, "And you're making it so that day doesn't have to happen again." And I said to myself, I will do that as long as I can get my old self up and get on a motorcycle. And now you don't have to ride a motorcycle. You can come on a moped or a car, whatever you want. We just want you to be able to come and say whatever you want to say to those families.
wow. That is absolutely amazing. And it's again, it's in a way, I think it's almost a shame that we need organizations and things like that because there's certain things that I think just should be or could be taken care of better. But that's a conversation for another day. And in the meantime, again, appreciate everything you and everyone with your organization is doing to have an impact on those people's lives. So I'm glad we had a chance to talk about that and share beyond what I remember seeing in the film. So thank you again for that, Rocky. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to, if we could, kind of pivot more to kind of today and maybe looking forward in terms of music and projects, anything in the works right now, and what might 2025 look like for you?
Well, we just Memorial Day this year, oddly enough, we played down in Florida at the Sharon L. Morris Theater, and we filmed it and we recorded it. And so in January on Amazon Prime, and I think on the PBS.com, but I'm not sure about that. I don't know if it's coming out there as well. But on Amazon, they're going to release that concert footage. And
Oh, wow.
it's interesting because if I guess we didn't talk about this, but like I'm kind of a purist, an old school guy. Maybe I might be a purist because I'm a purist, and I might be a purist because I'm not smart enough to know how to tune vocals and do use all the tricks that they use
Hmm.
in studios now. So like the way when you see the movie, all of except for like the videos at Universal with Lipstick and Dewey Still, those kind of things, everything else is live. It's us playing live, and it's kind of untouched. I mean, I mix it, I EQ it and put reverb and stuff on it, but I don't change anything. So if I sing a wrong word or I play a wrong chord, which I do very often, it stays in there.
Hmm.
And so this Sharon Morris Theater this is what happens that night. And our arrangements are very liquid in that the songs are the songs. But I spent so many years in Nashville playing for people that had record deals. I was a guitar player that played for people that already that had hit records and stuff. And we would always kind of play it exactly like the record. And I always thought, well, dang, if I wanted to hear the record, I'd just play the record. I want to kind of hear what they play, right? So my drummer, who is my hero, and my bass player, who's my hero, and my keyboard player and fiddle player and singer, we learn the songs, but I said, you play it the way you play it. And then we have freeform sections in the middle where we're just jams. So that's coming out in January. And we decided to play New York City. I hadn't played New York City since we did the Gramercy Theater and the Veterans Day Parade 11 years ago. And
Wow.
we played at the Cutting Room, and a whole bunch of people came. I mean, nobody was more surprised than me that all these beautiful, wonderful people in New York City came, and we filmed that one as well. And that's an entirely different kind of concert because the Sharon Theater's a big, it's like a theater with
Hmm.
it looks like we're playing it looks like we're playing a theater because we are. But then the Cutting Room's like a really cool, like a retro kind of vibe, like the 30s of in in Prohibition kind of place is what it looks like. And so we played that place and we recorded that, and that's going to be coming out, I think, in the summer as well. And then we're going to be touring all around. So if anywhere we are, come see us. Come and hang out with us.
Yeah, and I will tell you, Rocky, I'm going to be checking your website and your socials because if you're coming now, I'm sort of close to New York in suburban Philadelphia, but this is big country music territory around here in the Philadelphia suburbs, New Jersey,
Oh yeah.
Delaware. You come anywhere around here, I'll definitely be there. And I'll bring Rosie with me too. We'll be there to meet you in person and check it out live because,
Bring your
again,
guitar. Bring your guitar, Bill, or you can use one of mine. I'll have guitars there. You can play one of mine. Get up and play with us, man.
okay. I can play Johnny Be Good with the best of them.
Then
Um,
that's what we'll play, man.
yeah.
I figured I'll start working on it now. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just telling somebody the other day that over the years I've written some songs and a couple have gotten some local play here in the Philadelphia area, but the first, I think 9 of the first 10 songs I wrote all sounded eerily similar to Johnny Be Good because ADE was the only progression I figured out on the guitar.
What's interesting about those songs that Chuck Berry changed the world with is that he kind of picked up that rhythm, that dun to dun to dun thing from the piano player. John, I think his name was Johnny Jameson or something. And that piano player, so those songs were recorded in like B flat and E flat. They're all in weird keys because he was playing
Yeah,
from what the piano player did. And then of course me and you, when we learned Johnny B, we learned in A because it makes
yeah.
more sense in A. It makes a lot more sense and it's easier to play in A.
Exactly. That's a great point. Yeah, that's absolutely a great point. But no, I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to it. So I just had a couple more questions for you, Rocky, here today. And one is, and I know this one may be a difficult one. Looking back at all the things you've been through, all the things you've done, all the things you've accomplished, what would you say you're most proud of?
Well, I think that from a life standpoint of what am I most proud of in my life, I'm proud that I'm still here and I'm still doing it. I'm proud that my children have grown up to be good people that love me and that I love them. I'm proud that we stand for something because so many people don't. I'm proud that we have something that means something to us. And then as far as my my music and stuff, I just hope to get better at it. I hope to get better as I get older. And, I had an attorney once that told me, he said, I think you're just too stupid to quit. And I think he was probably right. I'm very honored. Like I said earlier, I'm completely flummoxed that I've been able to do something for a living that I would have gladly done anyway.
Yeah, that is to me, and you know what? You just, in my opinion, define success. That you get to do what you love to do and you would do it anyway. I can't think of a better definition for success than that.
Wow. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
So one last quick question for you, and I just kind of wanted to throw this out there because it was a line in the film that really stuck with me and love some of those hairband clips from back in the day. And there was a line there where I believe you said that when you got out of the army, your goal, your dream was to be the next Eddie Van Halen, only maybe taller and better looking. So how you doing so far?
Well, it didn't work out that I ended up getting a big rock band to play in. I went to a guitar school in California, and then
Yeah.
I auditioned for uh I don't know, dozens and dozens of bands, starting with cattle call auditions, and that's where I knew the day that I was putting on those spandex, it was going to come back to get me. There's no way that's not going to come back to haunt you. But um, I left Nash. I ended up leaving LA because I didn't drink and I didn't do drugs, and I was faithful to my wife. And it just not that people in LA are not like that as well. They are just the auditions I was getting. They weren't looking for a clean cut guy
Mhm.
in the bands I was auditioning for. So I moved to Nashville, and I changed my parameter. Instead of being Eddie Van Halen, I was going to try to be Tim McGraw,
Oh, there you go.
except taller and more handsome. And my wonderful, beautiful background singer, Dalen, who's been singing with us since she was 12, she's now 21. She says I'm currently shooting for Willie Nelson. And so if I was Willie Nelson, I'd be shaking in my boots tonight.
You know,
Pow.
I can't think of a better way to close things out, Rocky, than with that. So I think Willie, if Willie's watching this, he's going to be scared. He's hitting the bus right now to find something to calm down with.
I'm getting my nylon guitar out and I'm coming at him. You know
Yeah.
what, man? I appreciate you, Bill, and I appreciate you trying to help me get my music out to the world, and not just me, but all the people that you do. It's hard, I think, in this world to stick to original music in a world full of cover bands and tribute bands, and you're trying to book your own thing. And I think that people like you allow people like me to have a light at the end of the tunnel, and hope it's not a train.
No, well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate that. I really do. And for what it's worth, me having the opportunity to have conversations like the one you and I just had gives me the ability and the opportunity to do what I love to do. So I thank you for that. I thank you for joining me, for your genuineness, your authenticity, sharing your story with us. I cannot wait to see you perform and to meet you in person. And I'll bring my guitar and my two chords and we'll see what happens.
We'll do it, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
You got it, Rocky. Thank you so much for joining me. And folks, thank you for watching. We couldn't do it without you. See you next time.
Who's gonna love you now? Who's gonna love you now? Who's gonna love you now? Now that I'm gone. I wanna ride till I run out of highway. I wanna breathe as long as I can catch my breath. I wanna watch the sun come up out of the ocean and go down to the deep blue sea. I don't have the answers. If you think I do, then run away. I'm not a martyr, not a hero, not a saint. But if you think it's over for me,